तो इसका
रुकिए मैडम। हेलो।
हाँ आ रहा है।
मैम तो एक बार कोऑर्डिनेट कर
Welcome everyone for today's second session as a part of our ongoing FDP on recent advances in renewable energy technologies. It's wonderful to see such enthusiasm from all the participants. The topic we are going to explore today is disruption in the energy sector. To guide us through this fascinating and important topic, we are honored to have with us Professor Pratham Arora, a distinguished expert in the field of energy system and technologies. Dr. Pratham Arora is currently an assistant professor in Department of Hydro and Renewable Energy, IIT Roorkee. His research is focused on comparative life cycle assessment, process optimization, and techno-environmental analysis of different energy and environmental systems. Prior to joining IIT Roorkee, he was postdoctoral fellow at the Georgia Tech at Atlanta in the Industrial and System Engineering Department. He has completed his doctorate from IIT Bombay, Monash Research Academy, a joint venture between IIT Bombay, India, and Monash University, Australia. He has been working in collaboration with highly innovative, sustainability focused companies such as Elginol Biofuels, Lenzatech, Pontoca, Orica Mining, and Global Thermostat. He has been working on modeling and simulation techniques to quantify the economic feasibility and environmental feasibility of future oriented energy production pathways. On the local scale, his team is looking at the development of energy water air nexus for wastewater treatment. Further, at the community scale, his team is looking at decentralized electricity production from the co-gasification of pine needle and plastics. Both these waste feedback stocks are a nuisance for the Himalayan region, and their work focuses on developing on sustainability supply chain from them. Additionally, in line with National Hydro Mission, they are also exploring decentralized fertilizer production at the district level. At the national scale, his team is also trying to explore the potential of the discussed technologies in the meeting the net zero target of 2070. Utilizing the global change assessment model software, they build future scenarios that highlights the role of different sectors in decarbonization. These results would help the policymakers to make informed choices given the fact that there is no single energy production pathway that can be truly sustainable. Without further ado, I now invite Professor Pratap Arora to enlighten us with their valuable insights. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Jyoti, for the nice introduction. And I believe I'm audible to everyone. Can someone please confirm?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible.
Okay, great. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen. So it's indeed an honor to be present here and discussing our work with all of you. Is the screen and the slides visible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So what we'll do, like we'll be having this discussion for maybe 1 hour, 15 minutes or so, and then there could be some time for question answers. Meanwhile, I would be happy if you like interrupt me in between, and there could be some discussions as well. But I would be happy to have discussion as we go along. So before we proceed further, let's try to have a look at the energy scenario in general, how it has been changing over the years. So here is a nice infographic that I recently came across, and I would like to share with all of you. Also, let me know if the voice of these videos are audible at your end. You have in this figure is like you have been seeing how the energy, primary energy sources have been changing for the past 200 years or so. So 200 years back, most of the energy was coming from just one source, which is biomass. So can anyone guess what was the energy need 200 years back? If you can just speak up. Anyone? So like in that case, like if you try to visualize like 200 years back, most of our energy needs were coming just from the heating as for cooking purposes. And for that, biomass would suffice. And back then, if you see all the other sources of energy are almost nil. There was some coal consumption, basically because of the development taking place because of industrial revolution that was going on in Europe. And here you see the year, here you see the total amount of energy production, and then individual energy production is coming in here as well. So I believe like this infographic is visible to all of you as it is moving. So we'd see that with time, our energy consumption has always been increasing. So if you see the cumulative number in here, this is always increasing. Beyond the 1850s, you would have a drastic increase in the consumption of coal because this is when the industrialization picked up. And you also had oil, gas, and hydropower coming in. But all the major renewables, as you see today, are almost zero. Coal became the leading source of energy, followed by biomass, and then oil took a leap in the middle 19th century, where the oil consumption reduced, increased again, much because of transportation that was available, and gas also picked in. We have nuclear coming in, and hydro was a bit significant. Biomass then got reduced from the third position to almost the fourth position. Gas also took up because gas was a cleaner source and also cheaper in some sense. But oil by far was the leading source of energy. One of the reasons why oil was consumed on a large scale because of the huge transportation that was becoming prominent. People were starting to transport over long distances, and oil seemed to be a much better option. And further, but if you see that cumulative consumption, like beyond the 1980s, there, like of course, there's a small reduction at some points, but it's always going to increase. Come the 1980s, you see that these three sources are the major source, followed by biomass, and then we have a bit of hydro and nuclear. And this is the time when you would have the influx on the wind, like 1987 or so. This was when the wind came in, and also the solar came in. So these technologies are not new, but like pretty old. But you would find like biofuels were a greater use as compared to these two major sources of energy as we know today. Even in the early 1990s, biofuels were producing much more energy than the wind and the solar combined together. Then, but these three sources, which is the oil, coal, and gas, were the major sources of energy. And what we see that with the influx of like the year 2000 and later on, there would be a drastic increase in the production of coal as well as the utilization of coal. Why was that to happen? Because our neighbors in the north, China, was becoming the factory of the world, and they were manufacturing every other product that was possible. And this manufacturing needed energy. And since coal was a cheap source of energy that was available, they used coal like anything. And further, you could also see the other renewables are increasing, but the order of magnitude is way smaller as compared to these three major sources. 2015 or so, coal has slowed down because China has received the optimum, and now it was exploring other options like production of gas and utilization of renewables. So this is the data till the year 2019, but it gives you an idea of what the energy scenarios currently looks like. Even today, majority of the energy, more than 80%, 85% of the energy globally is coming from these three resources, which is coal, oil, and natural gas. Now let us also have a look back in the history to understand how fast the energy transition occurs. So let us have a look at this photo. So this is the Fifth Avenue in New York, 1900. And this is one of the richest streets of the world, where the who's who of the world are living. The major bankers are living here, the major industrialists are living here, and they are the affluent society. And this is what the street looked like, the Fifth Avenue, New York. You have the Empire State Building on this very road. And if you look closely, like it was filled with horse carts, and there was just one car in here. that you can see in here. The rest of the transportation medium are being like having horses as the source of energy, so-called energy. Now, when you talk about horse carts, there was one issue. The horses normally had the horse dung being spilled on the roads, and since these were the affluent section of the society, they didn't wanted they didn't like the smell of this horse dung, and they wanted to have somewhat of a cleaner option, the so-called cleaner option at that time, because horse dung was considered to be contaminated. So they were looking for something cleaner or a clean source of energy, and they thought like, let us go for horseless buggies. And in that case, the horseless buggies were basically engine-based cars, and they started shifting towards this technology because horses was much of a mess, and too much time was required for maintaining the horses and keeping the horses. So let us go to something more benign and clean in nature. Now let's move fast forward. The same street, and the year is 1913. And this is what a picture of the street looked like. Again, the same street, just the angle is different. And it is filled with cars, which are running on different kinds of engines. Don't be surprised if there are a few EVs in them as well, because EV is not a new technology, but has been known for quite some time. And there was just one car that you see in here that doesn't, one horse cart that even look like a horse cart. So that is in here. So there was just one horse cart. So this is a thing that I would want you to be aware of. What I'm talking about is 100 years back, more than 100 years back. And this is the time that it took for a major energy disruption to take place at that time. All the horse carts got replaced by vehicles, IC engine vehicles, on a particular street in a matter of just 13 years. So this is what I mean by disruption. With this, I'll just take a small break, and can someone please confirm if the slides are visible and you can hear me? Can someone just do me this favor? Great, because yeah. So thanks for the feedback. In case anyone has any doubts, feel free to interrupt me in the between as well. No issues in that. So this is how fast a major disruption in the energy sector and the transportation sector has occurred in the recent past. And this is what we are discussing in today's lecture, disruptive technology. So what exactly is a disruption? A disruption is something when a new product or service helps create a new market and then significantly weakens, transforms, or destroys the existing product market category. Like we have seen in the example of horses, they got replaced by cars. Back in my childhood, I was using something called as floppy disk. The storage capacity of those floppy disks was around 1.44 MB. They got replaced by something called as CDs. CDs got replaced by DVDs. DVDs got replaced by pen drives. And now I don't use pen drives even anymore. Like I would be storing everything on cloud. So this is what a disruption looks like. A new product has came to the market and it's going to significantly weaken, transform, and destroy the existing product. And what happens along with this disruption? Now, this is the Ford Motor Company in the year 1930. And this was the largest employer of workforce anywhere in the world. So just remember, in the year 1900, there was hardly any car even on the richest street on the world. 13 years down the line, a company that was leading car manufacturer of the world became the largest employer of workforce anywhere in the world. So this is how the jobs shift along with the energy transition. Now let me ask you guys a question. Any ideas what would happen to the horses? Just to make sure you guys are awake, because I can see you anyway. Any vague answer?
Said they all were shifted to the horse race.
No, that's one thing. How many horses do you have? Any other guesses? There are quite a lot of horses. Anyone else? Well, if there are no answers, like let me break the silence for you guys. Actually, they ate all the horses. So this is basically an article that shows you the dean of a prominent university which is advocating a certain kind of diet. You have to do something with the horses. So one disruption ends up leading to another disruption in your food habit as well, because something needs to be done with the horses as well. Let me take you through another example. So this was the year 1990, and AT&T is a major telecom player. So back 20 years back, you might have seen that if you would have to make a call to the US or other developed nations, you would take services from AT&T. And AT&T is still a major telecom player in the US, something synonymous with Jio or Airtel in India, which provides telecom services. So back in the 1990, this company AT&T came up with a device which looks something like this. And they hired a major consulting firm, which is called McKinsey and Company. Most of you might have heard about this company, to get a forecast like what could be an adoption of a device like this. Because till then everyone was using landline, and they come up with something innovative and were not aware like whether people are going to like it or not like it. And McKinsey did all the analysis, and they said possibly 9 lakh people globally might adopt a device which was called the mobile phone at that time. If I look at the actual numbers of the adoption of the device, which is the mobile phone, it was 109 million, which was 120x as compared to the prediction that was done by one of the major consulting firms. So we need to be asking ourselves, like it's normally the experts, insiders, and the mainstream analysts who would dismiss the disruptive opportunities. I believe if you go to your childhood, most of you would have been using, or like maybe 10 years back, most of you would have been using a Nokia phone. The Nokia phone was the first phone that I got in my hands, and I believe most of it would be true for like all the esteemed faculty members who are here, who I believe would be in their 30s or so. So Nokia used to be one of the major market players back then. And if I look at the Forbes magazine cover in the year 2007, it ran a front page. It said Nokia, 1 billion customers. It indeed had 1 billion customers at that time. And they also said, can anyone catch the cell phone king? Because they were like, cell phones were almost synonymous with Nokia. If I want to go for a cell phone, it always meant that I would be going for a Nokia phone. But back in the year 2007, something else was happening. What was happening? The iPhone was launched. And then there are some prominent people who said like about the iPhone. There's no chance that the iPhone is going to get any significant market share. There's no chance. And then in the Bloomberg magazine or the agency said like the iPhone's impact will be minimal. It's only going to appeal to a few gadget freaks because it has nothing so innovative in it. Nokia and Motorola have nothing to worry about. You don't hear about Nokia and Motorola anywhere. And then like even Bill Gates have been saying the total number of users is still very small. Well, the important thing to note here, like we are almost 20 years from this prediction, and I'm sure that none of us would be using a Nokia phone. There might be exceptions, but majority of us would have hardly seen a Nokia phone in like with us or with our families or close relatives. Whereas if I took the iPhone, I would not be surprised that many of you are attending this lecture on your iPhones, or iPhone is something that is there within like that is being used by your family members. So this is how like disruptions have been taking place in the past. Something that was not felt to be of much of a potential has basically captured the whole of the market, and something that was considered to be like something like Nokia, which was considered ubiquitous to phones, is no longer a player. So the question we need to ask ourselves, like, why do smart people at smart organizations, I'm talking about you, consistently fail to anticipate or lead market disruption? Let's try to understand this one fact, like based upon the experience of the past 100 years or so, why people have been consistently failing to anticipate or leading market disruption. One thing that people often oversee is the technology cost curves. So when I say the technology cost curve, it basically means that the technology is not going to increase linearly, but exponentially. Take, for example, the Moore's law. The Moore's law is basically a computing law which basically says that the number of transistors on a given year or a given area are going to double every 2 years. Basically, that means 41% computational capacity increase every single year. Let me repeat. There's a law in the computing field which is called the Moore's law, and which basically states that the number of transistors are going to increase at an exponential rate. So when the number of transistors are increasing, it's basically an increase in the computational capacity. Further, there is a similar law with respect to data storage, which is called the Criders law, which basically means again a huge increase in the the memory capacity of your devices. Just have a look at the hard disk. The size tends to be growing small and small, but the storage capacity keeps on increasing. Something similar is with respect to the lithium-ion batteries, where the prices have been falling consistently in the range of 10 to 20% for the past many years. Just to give you an example of the basic concept of Moore's law, this has been very nicely applicable to almost 4 decades, and even today it's quite talked about. So for the last 4 decades also, we have been seeing that for every 2 years, the number of transistors on a given area has been doubling, which is basically leading to an exponential growth. People have always been thinking maybe the Moore's law's limit has came next year. This will not happen because we have already reached the panacea of technology. But again, like this, no matter what happens, this law seems to be applicable, and this has led to many innovations and many nice products coming out. So just to give you an example, let's go to the year 2000, maybe 25 years back, and we have the world's first teraflop computer. So where was this? This was in the Sandia National Lab in the US. The US tends to have many national labs, like we have the CSIR labs in India. The US has national labs, and Sandia National Lab is one of them. So in the Sandia National Lab, they built the world's first teraflop computer. It occupied a great deal of space. So the space that was occupied was roughly 1600 square feet or 150 meters square, as you can see in the figure as well. The power consumption was also quite high, as you can see in here. So it basically consumed 850 kilowatt of power. Just for the sake of comparison, a typical home has a power consumption rating of 4 to 5 kilowatt. Then the cost was a whooping $46 million. So it came at a cost as well. It was not something that was cheaply available. Now fast forward it to a couple of years, and you would have this gentleman, which is now greatly in news. He is the CEO of NVIDIA. His name is Jensen Huang, and what he is holding in his hand is 8 teraflops. So just for the sake of comparison, it's just a couple of years back. This is the CEO of NVIDIA holding 8 teraflops in his hand. And just 15 to 20 years back, 1 teraflop occupied this much amount of space. Not only was there a space reduction, there's also a reduction in the power consumption. So this particular device that you see, or the chipset that you see in his hand, had an energy consumption of just a meager 250 watt. Compare this with 850 kilowatt, many orders of magnitude difference. The cost, just $600. 15-20 years back, the cost was $46 million. So this is how technology has progressed for the past many years. Some of you who might be owning an Apple iPhone and are carrying an iPhone in your pockets, possibly you are having a similar computational power in your pockets as well. So this is how technology has been progressing for the past many decades. Let us also take the example of the replacement of black and white TV with color TV. I believe most of you again would have seen some kind of black and white TV in your childhood, but gradually they got replaced by color TV. Let us try to understand how this replacement was happening in the case of the US. So the color TVs in the US were introduced in the early 1960s. So the early adoption for the first 10 to 15 years was pretty meager. Not many people wanted to go for a color TV. They were happy with the black and white TV. But once the market was around 10% market was captured, the capture from 10% to 80% happened in no time. And then slowly but gradually, the rest of the market was captured by color TVs as well. So I don't see anyone who would be using a black and white TV today. Even if you would want to use a black and white TV, you would not get one in the market today. And what was happening simultaneously was also a reduction in the price. So this is an important thing to learn, that this is how technology progresses. What normally happens is the technology is going to take time till it captures 10% of the market. So once the technology has captured from 0 to 10% of the market, the capture from 10% to 80% happens quite fast that you would not even notice. And then it gradually captures the rest of the market as well. Let's take the same example of horses getting replaced by cars. It took some time till 10% of the market was captured, but from 10% to 80% happened quite fast, and then slowly and gradually the rest of the market was taken over as well. The car market share from 11% to 81% happened in just 10 years. Now, some of you guys might be saying that, okay, that was a different country, a different time. We are having different problems. We are going through some kind of economic slowdown, just recovering from COVID. There are some major wars going up in in different parts of the world. Possibly not going to happen now. The infrastructure for so and so technology is not there. You might be saying to the proponents of electric vehicles, we don't have electric vehicle infrastructure. You might be saying to the hydrogen people, again, no hydrogen infrastructure. How can you talk about hydrogen-based energy production pathways? But remember, 100 years back, there was no oil industry and there was no water industry. These two industries were built from scratch. Neither was there a mass-scale production of oil from the Middle East that was being transported in the US, nor was the auto industry as we know it today. There were no major part suppliers like Bosch or others which are making quality products in Germany and then supplying to the other parts of the world. These two industries were built from scratch. Remember, the horses didn't need any roads, so there were no roads, no paved roads as such. And so the paved roads need to be put in, and so the whole new road infrastructure was put into place. They had their own wars. They were undergoing the World War One. So if you would want to know, the World War One was from 1914 to 1919, and they were going through their own geopolitical events. And finally, they also had their own COVID, which was the influenza pandemic, or the Spanish flu, which was spanning over the years of 1918 and 1919, which was equally, if not more, problematic than the COVID that we just recovered from. So these countries, or many globally, was also going through many of the problems that you might hear. So in case you're talking about the hydrogen economy or the influx of solar and wind, this might be a common topic by people who say, like, we don't have any infrastructure, we have this and this problem, there is no off-takers available in the market. But just see what happened 100 years back. So disruption still happened even after so many of the problems that were at that time. And this is, again, let me reiterate, this is why we need to understand the technology cost curve. So the technology cost curve basically means that initially the technologies grow slowly in the market till it captures roughly 10% of the market. And once that 10% of the market has been captured, from 10 to 18% is going to happen in a fairly short time. And then gradually and slowly it is going to capture the rest of the market as well. This is what has been happening with the major technologies in the world. And this particular curve is also called as the S curve, Pearl curve, or the technology cost curve. Now let us try to understand some of the disruptions that might be happening in the energy sector. Or before that, let us also have a look at the energy scenario of India or globally. First, so this data is coming from basically BP Energy Outlook 2019 edition. I specifically took this edition because I wanted to show you the pre-net zero predictions. So first, what are the fuels that are being used for producing the energy? And what have been the fuels that have been used in the past, and what is the projection? So this is the data that changes from the year 1970 to 2014. What were the fuel consumptions for the primary energy production? And if you see closely, you will see majorly three sources have been responsible for much of the energy generation. What were they? Oil, gas, and coal. Among the three, the most dominant was oil because much of the transportation sector is basically dependent on this oil, which is basically being generated in the Middle Eastern countries. The second major is currently is gas, but that used to occupy the third space maybe 2 or 3 decades back. And then the third major option is coal. So what do we see in here that in the past or in the past 2-3 decades, what has happened is gas is expected to displace coal. Why would that happen? Because gas is somewhat of a cleaner source and a cheaper source as compared to coal. But these three sources combined together provide a major quantum of our energy requirements. If I talk about the others in terms of nuclear and hydro, these are quite small and expected to remain almost similar for the coming 20 years or 15 years as such. But where we can see a drastic increase is specifically in the use of renewables. So if I talk about the renewable capacity, it's going to increase by a factor of 4 to 5x in the coming 15-20 years or so. But still, majority of the energy is still going to come from just three sources, which is oil, gas, and coal. Now, which areas are going to use much of the energy? So if I see in the past, there's a block called
Excuse me, sir.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. So what's y-axis showing? Like x-axis is the years, and what is the y-axis?
Y-axis is basically the total quantum of energy in exajoules. So it's a quantum of energy that is getting produced. Sorry for that, like there are no units in here. And thanks for pointing this out. So y-axis is basically the quantum of energy that is getting utilized or produced. Now, where exactly is this energy getting used? So we have divided the world into different parts, and there's a chunk of countries called OECD. When I say OECD, this basically refers to Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. So what exactly is this OECD? This is basically a chunk of developed nations of the world. The US, Canada, much of the Europe, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, South Korea. This is what I mean by the OECD. If you look 50 years back, this chunk was consuming a great amount of energy globally. But even today, these countries combined together consume somewhat of an energy today. But they are not like they are consuming a good chunk, maybe 40% of the energy. Earlier, they used to consume roughly 70% of the energy. An important thing to note here is that the energy consumption in this OECD block is slightly reducing. Would anyone try to guess, like, why was the energy consumption in OECD block reduced at all in the coming few years? Any guesses?
So what was the full form of OECD?
Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. Basically, developed nations of the world.
And so could you repeat the question?
So the question here is like, would anyone like to guess, like if you see the green bars in the second graph here, they are almost stagnant by the year 2020, and by 2030 or 2040, there seems to be a slight reduction in happening in the energy consumption. So why would the energy consumption reduce in this block? What is happening? Why would the energy consumption go down? Okay, so let me try to help you out in here. One of the major things that is happening in the developed world is more and more energy efficiency. So what they're doing is they are using much more and more appliances that are efficient now. So whenever you are using efficient appliances, you need less amount of energy for the same amount of output. Further, another thing that is going through the developed world is the population crisis. The population is somewhat decreasing in many of the countries. Then comes another major chunk, which is China. So if you see, China was using a mere part of the energy back in the 1970s and 80s, but today it is the largest energy consuming country of the world. And when did it become like the largest energy consumer? Possibly in the era of 2010 and 20s, when it became the factory of the world. In the coming 20 years or so, the growth is going to stagnate. and the consumption of energy is also going to stagnate. But China has been one of the proponents of the growth of energy globally for the past 2 decades. Then come India in the light blue color. So energy consumption was small, and it's still very small as compared to China. But if you see closely, in the coming 20 years or 15, 20 years, it's almost going to double or triple. So this is significant because energy consumption is going to grow significantly in the coming few years. Something similar could be said for the other parts of the world where you can see significant energy consumption increase. But India is one place where energy consumption is going to increase exponentially for sure in the coming few years. Now, where exactly would you use this energy? So if I talk about the usage of energy, this could be grouped into 4 sections. The first one is the buildings. So I believe most of you will be sitting indoors in different kinds of buildings. And within these buildings, there could be centrally heating. Those who are sitting maybe in the southern part of the country might be using ACs at this time. Others might be using some kind of heaters or some kind of fans, some kind of electronic devices. So as such, buildings tend to consume a good amount of energy. Then comes in the transportation sector. So if I talk about the transport sector, there is 4-wheelers, 2-wheelers, buses, trains, aeroplanes, marine shipping. They tend to consume good amount of energy. We also have the industry, which is by far the largest consumer of energy. So industry has been the largest consumer of energy in the past and is also expected to be in the future. So if you see in the past, majority of the energy was going to industry, and something similar is going to be the case in the future as well. Then there is also a section called as the non-combusted section. So when I say about the non-combusted section, this is basically use of the different fuels, not for combustion, but for production of related goods. So if you talk about majority of the fertilizers and insecticides are coming from different grades of fossil fuels. The petrochemicals are coming from fossil fuels. The different kinds of lubricants that you use in your vehicles are coming from fossil fuels. So this is what I mean by the non-combusted sector. So if you see how this energy consumption has been changing in the past, of course, industry was a major consumer and is expected to be the major consumer in the coming few years. One place where you see significant energy increase is the buildings. So as we are going in the future, the life or the homes and the energy requirements in the buildings have been increasing quite significantly. And something similar could be seen for the transportation case as well.
Excuse me, sir.
Yep.
So, as the end use sector, we can see that the large amount of energy is consumed in building, and the second industry sectors.
Industry is the first and buildings is the second.
Yes, combinedly they are very large amount.
Yes.
And they are not necessarily to be depending on the oil sector. So according to first diagram, and the oil is taking the major part of the bars. So why not renewable is replacing this? Because these two sectors where we can use this renewable energy.
Okay. Let's try to answer that together. So first, let's tackle the the case of industries.
Okay.
What do you think would be a major use of energy in the industries?
Electricity means run the machine or the buildings to be means AC buildings, offices.
No, the majority of the energy in the industries goes in the high temperature operations. So if you see what major industries here are, the iron and steel sector, the cement sector. Now these have processes that are running at 1000 degrees Celsius or more. Can you use electricity for producing such high heat?
No, but only they are taking into account those things only.
Yeah, no, they're taking into account all the things, but majority of the energy is in this form, the heat energy. So majority of the energy requirement, if I talk about any industry or any major industry like iron, steel, cement, petrochemical, ammonia industry, fertilizer industry, is in the form of the heat that they require. Okay. The boilers that they're requiring. And the fuel that majorly goes into it is some kind of crude or coal, which is used for cooking it.
Can solar cannot fill the back some part?
Yeah. So can you speak slowly? There's some noise coming from your end. Yeah. And can you speak the question again?
Can solar fill?
No, yeah, that's a good question. We'll be answering this question in the future slides as well. But solar, as such, if you talk about solar PV, is going to produce majorly electricity. And electricity would not normally be utilized for reaching temperatures around 1000 degrees Celsius, because electricity is a high grade of heat energy and heat is a low grade of energy. So normally you would need some kind of energy source where you can directly produce heat. This is where the question comes for industries. If I talk about buildings, this might not be very common for India, but if you go to the US or the European countries, heating is a major requirement because these are predominantly cold countries. And what are you using for heating in these buildings? Earlier that used to be coal, now it is natural gas. So now you are able to connect?
That I could, but partly I feel can solar can give some of that. Still, I feel.
Yeah, so let's come to that in the future slides.
Okay.
Okay. Now, another aspect that we need to be aware of is energy poverty. So what is energy poverty? It has many definitions, but if I go with one of the definition that is available even on Wikipedia, that any person, if he or she is not able to have 120 units of electricity in 1 year, and if he or she is not able to have 35 kgs of clean cooking facilities in 1 year, is considered an energy poor. Let me repeat it again. Any person who is not having access to 120 units of electricity or 120 kilowatt hour of electricity and 35 kgs of clean cooking facilities in terms of LPG, that is considered to be energy poor. Just for the sake of comparison, in many states in India, 200 units per month of electricity is given free by many governments. So that's a pretty liberal definition. And if you would want to compare this with the LPG cylinder, a typical LPG cylinder that you have in your homes is basically coming in the weight range of 14 to 16 kgs. Now, if I look at the energy poor people globally, this is one infographic that is trying to depict them. So it has two aspects to it. One is the absolute number of people and the percentage of people. So if the color of this circle is more towards the red, it basically means a majority of the people in that country are energy poor. And if it's towards the green, the darker shade of greens mean the very less percentage of people are energy poor. Further, the diameter of the circle basically says that the absolute number of energy poor people in that country. So if you look at towards Africa, we can see that many of the sub-Saharan countries, majority of the population are energy poor. They don't have this bare basic electricity and clean cooking facilities available to them. But should you be happy in India? In India, the color is quite on the darker sides of green. Possibly 99% of the people are not energy poor. But if you see the diameter of the circle, it is largest. So in India, we have the largest quantum of energy poor people anywhere in the world. Although the percentage of people, these people might be very small because our population tends to be very high. We are the most populous country in the world, but the quantum of energy poor people is quite a lot. And it is the responsibility of the nation to give them at least the basic requirement of energy. And this is one of the reasons why energy consumption in India is expected to grow somewhat at a very fast rate in the coming few years. Now let us try to have a look at some of the disruptions that are going to occur in the energy sector. So let's first have a look at the disruptions in the transportation sector. So if I look at the transportation sector, one thing that is making a lot of inroads is the use or is the lithium-ion batteries. If I talk about the lithium-ion batteries, their price has been decreasing at a very fast pace, roughly in the range of 10 to 20% every single year. What is the reason behind it? There have been many major companies investing into batteries. There are three major industries that are investing into batteries currently: the IT and the electronics industry, the automotive industry, and the energy industry. The result has been that there are a lot of big gigafactories coming into play, and because of manufacturing at scale, there has been huge reduction in the price of batteries. This is a look at the Tesla's gigafactory. So they are putting up investment of the tune of $5 billion, which is expected to create 6,000 plus jobs, and also producing battery packs enough to power 5 lakh batteries or 5 lakh cars every single year. The result, huge reduction in the price of batteries, because something if you manufacture at scale, the price tends to go down. Further, if I compare how the manufacturing capacities of the batteries have been increasing in the past, if I go back to the year 2014, there were just 3 gigafactories. If I fast forward it to year 2020, there were roughly 121 gigafactories. A lot of companies, some of the names that are listed here, are investing into batteries. Example being Tesla, of course, the leading EV manufacturer. Companies like Samsung, LG, Panasonic, Bosch. You would see Dyson in here. If you don't know Dyson is the leading vacuum cleaner manufacturer in the world. So Dyson is one company that manufactures good quality vacuum cleaners. And even a company like Dyson is investing a lot into batteries because they see the value in is immense in this particular field. So what is the result of this mass manufacturing or manufacturing of batteries at the scale? So recently there was an experiment that was done in Australia where the battery powered based backup was found to be much more efficient as compared to natural gas based speakers. So normally you would have the speakers that run during the peaking power that produce power using natural gas, and because their requirement is only for certain times of the day, normally the electricity produced is quite expensive in these speakers. But because of the bringing down of the price of the batteries, these speakers could now be replaced by huge battery storages. Then comes in the EV disruption. Linked to the battery disruption is the EV disruption. We are undergoing like more and more people are advocating the use of EVs. So one thing that you might be told, like if you go to buy a car into showrooms now, that an electric vehicle has much more efficiency as compared to the IC engine. Normally, an electric motor has an efficiency of the tune of 90% as compared to an IC engine, which has roughly 20% of the efficiency. That being true, but this is only limited to the pump to wheel efficiency. If you look at the well-to-wheel efficiency, which is taking into account the whole electricity production into account, or the fuel refining into account as well, the efficiencies of these two technologies are almost comparable. But that to say, where the advantages lie for the electric vehicle. Of course, if you talk just about the car, the motors tend to be much more efficient. But an electric motor also tends to have much less moving parts. So if I talk about a typical EV, it would have roughly 18 moving parts. And if I talk about an IC engine vehicle, which is run on petrol, normally it has 2000 plus moving parts. So what does that entail? So if you have more moving parts, it basically means more wear and tear. More wear and tear means more operational expenses or more maintenance expenses. And this is precisely the reason that the warranty that you get on electric vehicles is normally much more as compared to the IC engine vehicles. Till a couple of years back, Tesla used to offer infinite mile guarantee. You drive your vehicle as long as possible and nothing much is going to happen to it. Because they're quite aware, like the moving parts are quite less and nothing bad comes out of it. And that is why it is said that EVs are roughly 10 to 100x cheaper to maintain. This is what people have proposed. Although the initial capital expenditure might be quite high as compared to EVs, the EVs normally tend to come at around 15 to 80%, 50 to 80% more cost as compared to a typical IC engine vehicle. But given that it is cheaper to maintain, cheaper to operate, this might make sense in the total cost of ownership. Then some of you might be of the view that EVs cannot give you much of a traction. So this was a recent experiment done by the students of ETH Zurich in Switzerland, where they made an EV that could reach the speed from 0 to 100 kilometers in 1.51 seconds. That just beats the $1 million Porsche Spider, which could achieve such a feat in 2.2 seconds. Again, those of you who are driving an Ola two-wheeler or Ather two-wheeler or any of the electric two-wheelers that is available in the market today, you would see how good the pickup is. Like you just press the accelerator and the car or the scooter just zooms up. Then it might strike you that now you're looking towards a vehicle that has a lifetime which is 2.5x as compared to an IC engine vehicle. If I talk about a normal person like me, I would normally be driving my car for roughly 1 lakh kilometer, 2 lakh kilometer. After that, I would say it's already 15, 20 years. Who wants to drive this vehicle? Or maybe go for a new vehicle. So who exactly is going to look for those EVs, like which can run as long as 8 lakh kilometers, and they could be quite cheap to maintain as well. So you might have guessed it right. Like, who are the people who drive their vehicles more often than us? Any ideas? Because EVs have a much bigger lifetime. Who will be the major proponents of EV use? Will it be common people like you and me, or some other corporates which would be using their vehicles much more often than we do? Any ideas? So I believe like most of you would be now quite used to services like Swiggy, Zomato, or end of a last minute delivery or last mile delivery applications, and a few like applications like Amazon, Flipkart, and these are the companies who are investing a lot into electric vehicles. Why? Because these are cheaper to maintain. Their lifespan spans from around 2 to 5x as compared to the normal vehicles. So for the same vehicle, they tend to be, this is their main business, just riding vehicles and delivering products. It makes sense to them because overall they would want a lot of products to be delivered. And further, this also gives them a clean image because now they tend to be driving something which they can propose is having zero emissions. Another concept that is being interlinked or used with respect to EVs is the concept of vehicle to grid. Now, vehicle to grid is basically exploring that there's huge amount of electricity that is getting stored in the batteries of the cars. Can this electricity which is stored in the cars could be used to power the grid back during the peaking hours? This is the concept being explored. The experiments are being done in developed countries like Canada, where it has been found that if I see the study of Canada, like 70% of the Canada's daily electricity demand could be met based on the EVs. But we need to remember, like in a country like Canada, there are roughly 800 vehicles for every 1,000 people. This is normally a metric that is used, the number of vehicles per 1,000 people. So for a country like Canada, there is roughly 800 plus vehicles plus 1,000 people. In India, that number is very small, roughly of the tune of 40 vehicles per 1,000 people. So again, this concept might be explored in India, but like given the number of vehicles, it's quite meager in India. This might not be a big advantage, but other parts of the developed world are actively exploring this concept where the batteries, which are storing a good amount of electricity, could be used to power the grid back during the peaking hours. Now, also, let's also try to have a look at some of the disruptions that are happening in the solar energy sector. So if I talk about the solar energy, like we are moving at a very fast pace, and a lot of adoption has been happened in the last 1 decade. One typical example is this Copenhagen International School, which is in Denmark. So this is one of the leading schools in the world, and this is basically in the city of Copenhagen, way north. And this school is basically producing 50% of its electricity requirement with the help of solar panels. So the requirement is roughly 300 megawatt hour, and 50% of this is met with the help of solar panels. Can anyone see the solar panels in this picture? Where exactly are the solar panels? Anyone? So this is the Copenhagen International School in front of you.
So over the walls of the building?
Yeah. So it's the building integrated photovoltaic panels. So this school is able to generate 50% of the requirement of the electricity just using its walls. And just as a matter of fact, like Copenhagen is a country that is way north. The solar energy potential is way less than that we have in India, but still it is able to do quite well with respect to extraction of solar energy. And further, as we have seen in the past, the prices of solar energy are coming down at a very fast pace. We have seen that there were some countries like GE who thought like maybe solar energy or other renewable energy is not going to do very good. And couple of years back, they invested a good amount of energy into turbines development or into gas power. The result was they lost a good amount of money into market cap because renewables or clean energy is the future. Because there has been a typical example of a company like GE, which thought that thermal power is going to go good, but it helped them lose a good amount of market cap. Further, if I talk about the solar energy, it is becoming cheaper and cheaper with every passing day. And now what is being explored is also the use of innovative techniques in solar. And one such technique is the use of floating solar. So let me give you an idea for that. Like a couple of years back, we had the world's first large-scale floating solar plant being installed in Africa, and India now quite a few installations are being installed as well on this concept. The aim here is because, yeah, any questions?
Sir, actually, your screen is not visible.
Okay, let me put it again.
No, it is visible.
It's visible now. Can you hear me?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay.
That's maybe the local problem.
Okay, great. So there's no issues, like interrupt in between. I'll stop and we'll make all possible changes to make sure that you get the information. And one basic problem with solar energy is the huge amount of land that is required. So this problem can be solved by using huge water surfaces, which could be used for the for putting in solar PV panels, because the land requirement is done away with. And one of the major sites could be the large dams, because they already have the electricity infrastructure nearby. So here is an example of a company called Ocean Sun. Of course, we are not advocating any company, but just for the sake of showing things how they look like. Here is a video by that company. Let me know if you're not able to hear in the background as well. So basically, the advantage of something like floating solar would be it helps to keep the temperature low, which increases the efficiency of the solar panels, reduces evaporation, and also reduces the growth of harmful species like algae. Another technology that is being explored in the field of solar is the combination, or is towards the concentrated solar. So concentrated solar is a technology that we used to talk about 10 years back, but it lost the race to solar PV because of the pricing. But it's still coming back with the influx of artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms. So this is a company called Heliogen, which is able to harness the power of concentrated solars and to reach high temperatures. So again, coming to the point of like a gentleman who raised the question, like why cannot solar be used for reaching high temperatures in the industries? Well, that is now possible with the help of technologies like this, but these are still in the prototype or the or at a small scale. Just have a look at this technology, which is being developed by scientists from MIT and Caltech. This is an example of like how concentrated solar is being poised to use in the industries. We are like reaching high temperatures as it is a norm in the many industries was not a possibility till few years back. Now let us also go over some of the disruptions in the wind energy sector as well. So if I talk about the wind energy, like of course all of us have might have seen big windmills in different parts of the world, and they tend to be very high in height. The reason being increased height is to basically make best out of the high wind speeds that are available at a higher altitude. But that might not be the case in all the cases. Building such huge wind turbines might not be a possibility. So in that case, what is being now explored is like wind turbines, something similar to the kites that we fly on Makar Sankranti. So Makar Sankranti was just last week, and many of you might have flown different grades of kites. And exploring a similar concept is being explored by a company called Kite, where they have this phenomenon like kite, which is made to fly at high wind speeds at a greater height, and doing with the need of constructing big wind turbines. Let me give you an example of this, how this technology is working. So apologies, this video is in German, but I believe you get the concept by through the animation. So this is like the high wind potential for the around the world. So you can see the wind potential is quite high in like state of Tamil Nadu and the western states of Gujarat and Rajasthan. But using a technology like this, you could have huge wind energy generation to different parts of the country. Then there are other variations into wind energy where like people are exploring use of small trees like this. So this is called wind tree, and this is outside the COP21 where the Paris Agreement was signed. And you would have small micro turbines being installed like this, each tree having a potential to produce roughly 5 kilowatt of energy, enough to power one home. So this is another extreme of the technology that is getting used. Of course, like the CFD simulations that many of you would have been doing plays a significant role in designing technologies like this. Another technology that is being explored is the use of bladeless wind turbines, which basically makes use of the to and fro motion rather than or the vibratory motion rather than the rotational motion. So let me show you the example. So this is what a bladeless wind turbines look like. It has no blades, but it is just the back and forth motion that is being captured for the production of energy. So it's basically swinging back and forth instead of spinning. So why would you want to go for some technologies like this? So what is exactly a problem with the large wind turbines? We'll just show you in a minute. First thing is this could be easy to produce and install. You can see how the installation is taking place. And this is a major problem with the big wind turbines. A lot of bird hits, and those of you who here are animal lovers might not love such a sight. So that is one reason why people are going towards these latest wind turbines, which could have immense potential for the rural areas where they can be installed easily and harness energy. So this is with respect to wind energy, and also with the influx of hydropower, hydrogen. Like wind energy is also like being used a lot in the developed countries for like decentralized electricity production for producing hydrogen with the help of electrolyzers. So this is one video that is from Denmark, where they're using wind turbines for the production of electricity for production of hydrogen electrolyzers. Have a look at this. So this is the Siemens branded hydrogen pilot plant, wherein they have a 3 megawatt wind turbine. And which is having a battery backup of roughly 560 kilowatt hour. And this is basically coupled to alkaline electrolyzer, which has a peak capacity of 430 kilowatt, which is basically using the electricity for breaking down water into hydrogen and oxygen. And this hydrogen can then be stored. So here you have the typical hydrogen storage that you see in here. And here is a compressor that would be used to compress hydrogen from 30 bars to 300 bars. That could be used for filling of different cars or trucks. So these kind of pellet facilities are coming in different parts of the world, and a lot in India as well. So there's a nice facility by TSGC in Rishikesh, a similar facility, which is run on solar. And this facility is good at producing good enough hydrogen for powering 50 to 70 cars every single day. Then maybe in the interest of time, like maybe we can also we can just discuss this one thing and then we can take a break. So when we are increasing the energy requirement, we are also having a good we also need a great amount of storage, and this is needed because of a great because the prominent source of energy like wind and solar are variable in nature. So what could be the different examples of grid level storage that you could look at? So if I talk about energy storage, there could be different ways. It could be mechanical, like flywheels or compressed air. It could be electrochemical with different battery chemistries coming into play. Thermal, like molten salt. Electrical, like supercapacitors, which are used for really small power applications. And there could be hydrogen-based applications like power to power or power to gas. So we did this study recently, trying to see which would be the best cases for India with respect to the energy storage. And we basically tried to compare 5 different storage options. One was the batteries. And of course, when I talk about batteries, there could be different options. But the leading ones are, of course, the lithium-ion batteries. And the other one was the vanadium redox flow batteries, because they are found to be quite good at scales. The other option that we compared was that of pumped hydro. The pumped hydro has a concept that is very similar to a hydropower plant. So whenever you have excess electricity, you pump water from a lower reservoir to an upper reservoir. And whenever you need electricity, you let this occur like a normal hydropower plant, where the water is flowing from an upper reservoir to a lower reservoir, running turbines coupled to an alternator producing electricity. Then this is a typical example of a pumped hydro power station. Then there could be another example which is quite similar to pumped hydro, where we are using compressed air instead. So what is happening here is whenever you have excess electricity, you compress the air and store it in some kind of underground formation. And whenever you need electricity, you expand this air, run turbines, generate electricity. The concept is quite simple, but the efficiency tends to be on a lower front, roughly of the order of 60%. But as such, this is being experienced in a lot of countries in Europe. Then there could be a fourth option, which makes use of the concentrated solar. So in the daytime, when you have a lot of solar energy, use solar concentrators to heat some kind of materials or some kind of Asian materials to a temperature of roughly 500 degrees plus. And during the night time, use this heated materials to produce steam. This steam can then be used for running the steam turbines, producing electricity, and then the steam can be recycled. The material can be cooled to a certain temperature and again heated back during the daytime. So as compared to the earlier option, you don't need to charge these kind of systems with electricity. This basically gets charged from exhaust heat or from direct sunlight that can be coming from different sources. So, so this is what a concentrated energy solar plant looks like. And we did this analysis for a couple of, for these 5 technologies, and we had we had a comparison for them on the basis of two aspects. One was the levelized cost of storage. The average storage cost in rupees per kilowatt hour of energy storage, and what would be the carbon footprint, because if you're going towards renewable energy, what could be the CO2 emission resulting from storage as well. So this is something we wanted to quantify. So what you have in here, you have the global warming potential on the x-axis, which is in kgs of CO2 equivalent per kilowatt hour of storage. And what you have on the y-axis is the levelized cost of storage in rupees per kilowatt hour. So we can see, if I would want to compare the different options, pumped hydro seem to have the least, almost the least cost, as well as the least emissions. So some of you might be wondering, how can emissions come out from a hydropower plant? Well, even a hydropower plant would have significant emissions. First, it requires a huge amount of materials in terms of steels and concrete, and the manufacturing of these raw materials lead to production of these gases, because most of them are coming from carbon-intensive industries. Second thing is, because now these kind of reservoirs would be submerging a great amount of biodiversity. Now these plants are going to basically degrade with the time and going to release methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas, and the emissions have to be taken into account. So if I talk from a cost perspective, we have the pumped hydro, compressed air, and molten salt, which comes with cheaper options. Batteries, even after the reduction in prices, if you compare them with these large options, tend to be not so economically lucrative, but these prices are consistently coming down. If I talk about the results from an emissions point of view, of course, pumped hydro technology, like pumped hydro, which could be indigenous, can have a good potential. These are some technologies which we have discussed in this lecture. So, so I have a certain more slides with respect to hydrogen, and I believe we are already near the end of the lecture. So let me know if we should end here and take a break and take some questions, or maybe you can spend 10 more minutes on discussing the hydrogen cases. Let me know your preference for this. So in case you guys have any preference with respect to the discussion for the next 10 minutes. So in case, yeah, maybe I can discuss for 5 more minutes on the hydrogen thing, and then we can take this. I can bring this lecture to an end. So let's have a discussion of 5 more minutes, and then I believe that, or in case most of you are leaving, we can end the lecture here. So organizers, any preference in here?
No, sir. Please conclude.
Okay. So with this link, let's end this lecture, and we have been trying to discuss some of the technologies which are considered disruptive, and it was great discussing with all of you. So in case you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a mail. And with this, we bring an end to this lecture. I hope it was a learning experience for all of you. And with this, we end this lecture. In case anyone has any questions, feel free to ask, or else we drop.
Smriti,
Sir,
do you want to ask something, Smriti?
yes, sir, I
Please,
wanted to
please,
ask.
please go ahead.
Thank you, sir, for your nice lecture. So I wanted to ask, as we were talking about EVs and presently the research is going on hydrogen energy.
Mhm.
What is the impact for its long time scope, like of the EVs and positive impact? And since it has some negative impact too.
Right.
So what will be like? Is it better than utilizing our traditional forms of energy? Like there is a conflict on EVs. There's a lot of conflict. And what is the scope of the hydrogen energy, as you were telling? So recent, can you discuss in a very less moment about the hydrogen energy and the
Okay. So let me
latest?
try to answer your question. So again, like if you see the recent past, there have been a lot of reports by different leading organizations. Some say EVs are better, some say IC engines are better, and then some either say like hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are better. So if I consider like from an emissions point of view, of course, when you're using an EV, the CO2 reduction impact is not very substantial because eventually what is happening is because you're using coal-based electricity, you're just like transferring the CO2 emissions from the tailpipes to the power plants. But that is not the only emission that is happening from a IC engine vehicle. If you see the cities like Delhi or NCR, a lot of this smoke problem is resulting from the SOx, NOx, particulate emissions. So that tends to go down. So EVs have that advantage in terms of like bringing down other emissions in terms of SOx, NOx, particulates. If I talk about the CO2 emissions, not much. If we talk about the total cost of ownership, EVs tend to have a slight edge over IC engines. But a major problem here is energy independence. If you consider India, our crude extraction capacity is quite limited. So we are dependent on a lot of foreign nations for importing the crude. And we don't want to be dependent on that. And generating in-house electricity, maybe through coal, could be a better option. So that is why the government was proposing a lot of EVs. Now comes in a new player in the form of hydrogen. So if you talk about hydrogen, where its application going to be? Now EVs are good, but can you have long distance trucking based on EVs? Can you run your aeroplanes on EV? Can you run the ships on EV? Possibly no. And here is where hydrogen comes to your rescue. So EVs can be good for small distance or four-wheeler transportation or two-wheeler transportation. But when it comes to heavy-duty trucking or major hard to decarbonize sectors like air or marine, we would have to move towards alternate molecules like hydrogen and its derivatives, where it's the more potential line to be. If I talk about two-wheelers, four-wheelers, of course, hydrogen-based use is going to be more expensive as of today. But this is not where their true application lies. The true application lies in areas where EVs cannot make much of inroads. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, one more question I have. Like, you must have heard about microbial fuel cells.
Mm-hmm.
So, sir, is it feasible for the scaling up?
They're still in the prototype stage and like not much application. See, this is mainly for wastewater treatment. So don't see it from energy production point of view. That's going to be very
Is
small.
also utilized, but for the like in bio toilets in US also they have
Yeah,
like they
but
have done a demo.
yeah, small scale applications are there, but still we are looking for a large scale success story, which is not available till date.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think
Thank you,
like
sir.
constructed
Yes,
wetlands provide a better alternate for wastewater treatment if you're talking about towards nature-based solutions.
yes, sir. That's so. Okay. Thank you, sir. Sir, can you provide your email ID for like if we want to?
I'll put that in the chat box.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful session. I hope we all the participants enjoyed this session very well.
It was very nice lecture, sir. It was very nice lecture. It was very informative, very encouraging for us. This was the main objective of our FDP, just to lecture like this so that we can see the different aspects of renewable energy, different research, different technologies, those are coming up. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. It was a learning experience, or a great experience for me as well. Thank you. I'll drop from the call now. Thank you.